2, long 2, 1 1/4, 1 3/4, 1.5. It's probably recording now. It's just there, and there we go. We should be alive. Hello, morning startup. 2, long 2. There we go. I'm just going
Testing a 1 2 1 2.
Right, we are recording. There we go.
All right.
1 2. Cool. Right, I'm just going to close that down into there.
I always wanted to be a sound engineer. I don't know why. I just 1 2.
Let your dream realize.
I'm letting people in now.
All right.
Cool.
Participants, attendees.
That's not normal.
All right. See, Brendan is in. Got a few others coming in now. Cool.
There we go. Give them a second to filter in. There's 87 people that have RSVP'd.
Wow. You're a popular man, Brian.
I think online and lockdown is a good thing.
Yeah, I agree.
Nothing else to
A lot
do.
of people are happy. Well, hey, good morning, everyone. If you're piling into the meeting, hope you're all safe and sound out there amongst lockdowns and fires. 2021 certainly had some big shoes to fill, and it's not disappointing so far.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, look, we got some attendees in, so we'll get stuck into it, I think, and get through the intro slides. So yeah, good morning, everyone. My name's Scott Glue. I'm one of the organizers here at Morning Startup, along with Dave Newman. And today we have a cool talk with Brian Foody on serverless and product strategy, which we're going to get into really soon. But before we do, just got a couple of things to get through. So first of all, what we usually do is introductions and shameless plugs. So usually we're in riff and we give you the opportunity to stand up and introduce yourself and talk about what you're up to for 30 seconds. But because we're all online, we're going to do the chat thing. So if anyone's got any shout outs or links or anything that they want to do, just chuck it in the chat. And as we go through these intro slides, we'll shout them out. Now, I know Brendan had a pre-prepared shameless plug that he wanted to do. So I don't know, Dave, if you can make him.
So what I would do is
panelist or something.
temporarily promote him to a panelist, and I will remove that thing. I think Brendan, there we go. Brendan, you've been promoted to a panelist. Give him a second to come
Lucky
in.
Brendan.
Actually, I think Brendan will probably want to talk his slides. So what we'll do is we'll get through these slides here, and then we'll allow Brendan to share his slides.
No slides, just 2 minutes, 30 seconds chat.
Okay.
30 seconds
Perfect.
chat.
Okay.
Go on then.
Go for
While
it.
we're doing that, shameless plug, Brian. In fact, you know what? I said to you, and man of my word, I said to you 45 seconds. So just proof on the clock here.
Wow.
See
So-
how good you are. Because
so
you're
long-
pretty good at this. So I'm just going to put it. So, Brendan, when you're ready, your time starts now.
Right. Thanks, guys. Look, I'm appealing to the WA startup community this morning. willhq.com, as most of you have heard me say, simplifies the making and management of wills because thousands die annually without one, leaving legacies of costs and distress. We're talking to potential strategic partners, and I really want to demonstrate traction. So I'm asking the WA startup community to help me hit the 500 customer mark. I'll put all the details in the chat, but what it means is I'm asking you to use the service for 60% off. So pay $49 to make a will. If you don't have one, you will never get a better offer. Even if you have a will, please use the service anyway. I'll do this for $19 and I'll explain why. Now, nearly 45 seconds, so I'm gone, but I'm asking for your support, and I would appreciate if you help us to eliminate intestacy in Australia. How'd I do, Dave?
That was good. You're a few seconds over, but we'll let you off on this.
All right, thanks. Appreciate it.
Brilliant. No,
All
so
good.
if you can put the put it in that you have done there, willhq.com.
Did I get the URL right? It's not .com.au.
It's .com, and I'll post it all there now as well with my contact details also.
Brilliant. No, it's a great
Lovely.
service you're running there, Brendan, sorry. So yeah, 50% off. That's a great offer. So
60,
get out there.
60. I actually went
60.
over the top for the startup community.
Holy
Oh,
moly.
brilliant, brilliant.
Well, if you don't have a will, that's the way to go, guys.
Yeah.
So get on it and get him over the 500 user mark.
Yes.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. Getting there. Thanks, guys.
Thanks very much, Brendan. I'm going to demote you now, if I can, to to thing. So thanks very much, and we'll speak again when we can talk in person.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I don't see any other shout outs in the chat at all. So yeah, please, if you got a shameless plug or something that you want to mention, put it in the chat and we will get it up here somehow, some way.
I think, Brendan, you're going to have to jump off and rejoin, my friend.
Okay, yeah, can do.
You won't be able to join back in again.
Okay, will do.
Or you can stay there and just mute yourself.
I'll mute everything, all right?
There we go. I can mute you. There we go. And I have the power. Gee. Okay, let's get through these shameless plugs. Ammo marketing. Those are in the haves and those are in the haves nots. Scott and myself are most definitely in the haves with this great ammo marketing merch. If you haven't heard of ammo marketing, you've been under a stone for the last few years. A great marketing team help you kind of really get your brand growing. Looks at the pirate metrics. If you've never heard of those, go and Google them. Cam and the team there, great bunch of guys who will help you. They helped Basil win the election. So there you go. That's how great they are. Yeah, if you haven't also, go and check out the Weird Growth podcast, Ammo Marketing. It's lots of great content on there. Is there anything else we can add to that, Scott?
No, you did a pretty good job. So yeah, great. Weird Growth. It's a really cool podcast. Lots of good interviews and things with founders and innovation folk in Perth. So subscribe to that, please. It's your duty as a morning startup attendee. Do it.
Yes.
All right. Next up, we have Beecham Group. So thanks, Glenn. If you're there in the attendee list in the chat, you are a boutique recruitment company here in Perth. So guys, if you are looking for your tech talent, please reach out to Glenn and the guys at Beecham. And they'll definitely get you hooked up with the right person. Also, if you find yourself out of work and you're looking for a gig with a cool startup or a tech company here in Perth, reach out to them and they'll get you hooked up. They also have merch. Unfortunately, I'm failing with my stubby holder. Oh no, there it is. I just can't reach it with my headphones in. Anything else? Did I miss anything on Beecham?
No, I think you're great. Like I say, if you are looking for that job or you are looking to make a change, then check Glenn and the team out. So yeah, super supportive of the startup ecosystem here.
Absolutely. All right, and semi-finally, AWS. So AWS, there's a program in Meetup where they can sponsor startup-focused meetup groups. We fitted into that group, and they are now helping us out with meetup fees and things like that. So they are also providing founders with 1,000 USD in credits and 350 in developer support. So if you want to get in on that, use our morning startup link. I did have an Amazon one, but it was horrible. So it's bit.ly and MS for morning startup, AWS activate with hyphens in there. I feel that's easiest to remember. So get on that and get your $1,000 credits.
Yeah, I was going to say in AWS news today, Jeff Bezos has stepped down as CEO.
No way. I haven't caught that.
Yeah, it's a lot new. And also just a rest in peace, Captain Tom Moore, bless him, that British guy that walked around his house many times to raise some ridiculous figure like $60 million, unfortunately died overnight from COVID. So yeah, thoughts go out to their family. But yeah, AWS, if you are looking for hosting, and check them out. Obviously, Morning Startup, we run it for yourselves as a community, but it does cost us to do it. And thankfully, AWS accepted and said, hey, we'll cover your meetup fees, which were costing a bit. So thank you very much, AWS.
Just on that, if you've been following us over the last 6 months, we have had this slide up for a while, and it did say $100,000 in credits. There was a bit of confusion, unfortunately, in the messaging that AWS provided. There was I guess, teething issues as they were trying to get this meetup program underway. But you can qualify for $100,000 in credits if you are a special startup, which means funded by a small range of VCs in America, like Techstars and Y Combinator and things like that. For everyone else, you get $1,000 credits. Sorry for any confusion on that, but we've now sorted out the messaging after a lot of toing and froing with AWS. But this is the deal that we can offer you.
Brilliant.
All right, cool. All right, and we'd just like to do a shout out to some really supportive organizations here in Perth that you can reach out to help your startup journey. Startup News, please subscribe to them. They're always putting out great content dedicated to the Perth startup scene. So that is your number one go-to for learning about the startup space in WA.
Yes, so Startup News. So if you, we would normally say bless them, Voltage, they're going to be hurting this week. When we are back in the city and we are back in person, please make sure you visit Voltage Espressos. I know there's like 100 other coffee shops around them, but they've been supporting us and we've been supporting them now for nearly 9 years since this has been going. And if you haven't know where it is, it's kind of next to the new Vietnamese place opposite. So go through the double doors there, go in there and have yourself a great coffee. And when you're there, just mention to them that you're from Morning Startup and they will give you a discount, but don't take it. Do the right thing. Pay full price. And in fact, buy two and buy the neighbors next to one. And also maybe buy a sandwich and help them out this next week when we're all back in person. So
exactly.
Niche interview. If you haven't checked out nicheinterview.com, actually, I was on there a couple of days ago, sharing some of the content with some people. There's lots and lots of content on that place from previous presenters like Brian that we've got coming up. Go on there. The one I actually shared was actually from Ming on her 101 to Facebook advertising. So that was nice to share that with somebody, but they went on and had a look. So check out nicheinterview.com, to Jürgen and the team, and also to Yuri, who's the new, like I always say, he's a new Jürgen because they're totally different, but Yuri, who's also been videoing a few of the events. So thanks to Yuri for coming through recently.
Absolutely. Space Cubed, obviously we hold this at RIF usually, and if you need a place to work that's not your home when we're out of lockdown, get onto Space Cubed, who have RIF. They've also got Flux, and they've got a new one called Fern that opened a couple of months ago. No better place to work than what the guys at Space Cubed have to offer. Cool. And techboard.com.au, if you don't have your profile claimed on techboard.com.au for your business, make sure go and do it now, straight after this session. Go and claim it. And if you've got an announcement, put it on Techboard, and that will go out to their investor-heavy audience. So it's really, really good if you are raising money and just want to stay top of mind for angel investors and other investors around Australia.
Perfect.
Cool.
I think, did we do business news?
No, I didn't. Make sure you
right.
subscribe to Business News.
Yes, and if you want to get yourself mentioned in Business News, Charlie Gunningham is now their resident startup journalist and writer. So hit up Charlie Gunningham, and if you don't know who Charlie is, then ask Scott or myself or somebody else in the ecosystem. You will introduce you to Charlie. So yes, check out Business News as well.
Perfect. All right. Brings us to announcements. I'm going through the chat. Still nothing. Come on, guys. What's going on? You must have something you want to plug out there. Oh, Paul, legend. So, Indie Hackers, another meetup group, is a community of makers working together to build profitable online businesses. So they meet at RIF every month to share ideas, information in a social context. So yeah, thanks, Paul. I've been meaning to go to Indie Hackers every single time, but it's usually on a day or something that I'm running a kid around to an event, but I'm sure I'm going to get there one day. But yeah, thanks, Paul. And so make sure you go to meetup.com and get on the Indie Hackers Perth group, subscribe to that. And
there was something I was supposed to share, and I remember thinking it came up in my LinkedIn feed, and I was like, I must share that with the community, and I didn't write it down, and it's gone. There was a health or an accelerator going on. Didn't take any equity either. happening over in, I think it was in Brisbane. So you'd have to leave, obviously not this week, but hopefully next week. But they're taking applications at the moment. I will dig it out and I will send it out via the Morning Startup email. So make sure you've got that turned on in your announcements.
Great. Any other announcements, guys? If you do, just throw them in the chat. Hopefully everyone's kind of keeping an eye on it. Include your links and get the word out there. And if we see it, we'll mention it as well.
And hopefully we're only in lockdown for 1 week. Not the rumor mill is flying wild with the 3 weeks and the supposed 31 cases of June up. We'll see. So hopefully this is just 1 week and we can all get back to some normality next.
Absolutely. We're looking for speakers for this 2021. We've got a few lined up for the next couple of sessions, but if you're interested in doing a presentation at Morning Startup one day, if you got something you think the startup community would like to hear, please reach out to us. Can't be pitchy, can't be just throwing your organization out there. You've got to have something useful that the startup community can then take away and apply to their businesses. But yeah, reach out to us, contact@morningstartup.com. We've also got a Slack group, Facebook pages, and all the things. There's also a Slack group for pest startups called peststartup.com.au. So go there and get on it and have a chinwag with us during the week. Love to see you.
So the next available slot, I mean, I was due to do a presentation on the 3rd of March, but if you want to give us we run every 2 weeks. If you want to present, the 3rd of March is the next one, and then after that it's the 17th of March or the 31st of March onwards, and then every 2 weeks after that. So yeah, hook us up and let us know if you want to share some insight with the community.
Cool. All right, well, that's the end of our intro slides, so we'll hand over to our presenter. Dave, if you want to do some magic there. So I'm sure you're aware, we've got Brian Foody, who's of Sensitive, Ostal, and Bamboo. Been playing around with serverless for quite a while, and he's going to talk to us all about product strategy, and I'm sure that he can do a better intro than I can, so I think we'll just hand over.
So Brian, you have the ability, my friend, to share your screen.
Let me stop.
Lovely. Cool. I'll take over here. Thanks for the intro. I used to work with Dave. How many years ago is it now?
Oh, yeah. So if you didn't know, just for those of you who are watching, Brian is the brains behind the Synergy My Account. So yes,
many brains behind that.
Many years ago that was. We used to work together.
Yeah,
yes,
it feels like a long time ago now.
It does.
Okay, so I'll share my screen here, and I'll click that present button. So can you see my screen now? All good?
Absolutely. I can see a picture
Yes.
of David Hasselhoff with puppies over him.
That's me, you're confusing it. So this talk is the compounding returns of serverless. So it's a talk I gave at Latency, but I guess it came out of my time at Bamboo and going through a startup, an investment platform, and serverless together kind of made the title. So I've just tailored it a little bit for a more startup crowd, but it's mostly the same talk I gave at Latency. So the goal of this talk was to illustrate the real cost of the short-term decisions we make and understand the value of long-term thinking. So I've been through a few failed startups. So what I learned from the journey at Bamboo is really what I wanted to go through here and kind of look at, give you a conceptual model for the rewards you can get if you can think a bit more long-term with your startup versus kind of trying to hack it out the door, which I'd done previously, and you come up against a lot of hurdles after that. So if you can come out with a conceptual model, something like this at the end of it, that's kind of my goal. So I guess a little about me before I get started. I was born in Ireland, originally on a different west coast. So I grew up with the Atlantic Ocean beside me instead of the Indian Ocean. So I grew up right here. It's a lovely place if you ever get to visit it. But I've been in Perth for about 6 years now. So I guess 6 years ago, Dave, we worked together. I'm lead developer at Ostal, co-founder at Sensitive, and I was previously CTO at Bamboo, but it's been acquired now. And there's a new CTO in there. So yeah, I guess I like building products in small teams that tackle big problems. And past time sea swimming, haven't been able to do it this week, and then just trying lots of different things and usually failing pretty miserably at them. But God loves a trier, as my mom says. So I did another talk recently around the hostel work I do. So if you're doing anything with IoT and machine learning, that's a good talk to check out, and maybe hit me up, because there's not too many people doing IoT and machine learning in Perth. So it's good to kind of reach out to those people. So sensitive.xyz is another what I'm working on in my spare time. So this is, our goal is to check in on yourself as much as you check Instagram. So you might as well have a lofty goal if you have a startup, but I guess checking Instagram every day probably distorts your mental headspace. So our goal is to kind of give people a place to check back in on themselves. So mostly centered around mood tracking and kind of keeping track of where you are, which is kind of important throughout lockdown now. So the focus of today's talk is more around a previous startup at Bamboo. So I joined Bamboo in, geez, I think it was 2017, mid 2017. So I joined the Bamboo team, and it was kind of a transformative period for me in growing and what was really like an investment platform and a bank from the ground up, from an idea into a product that's now going really strong today. So I wanted to talk through kind of my lessons during that period and what I take into the sense of now and everything else I build moving forwards. So these are a lot of the good people. These are the core team I worked with when I joined. So I'd moved into the product phase of the cycle. So a lot of good people I worked with there, and many more before and afterwards. So just confirming you can all hear me fine. It's always weird when you do a...
Yeah, I can hear you fine. Can see your slides. It's all good from my end.
Perfect, cool. So pre-Bamboo, I guess compounding had never entered my mind. So this mindset I had, I never invested my money. It was just in my account. I spent money pretty willy-nilly, so I didn't really because I didn't really value the money or the compounding of it. I got $300 AWS bills in my personal account. Didn't even look up these programs like Activate. I never understood the worry about fees, interest rates, all of that. Didn't really care. And that also kind of bled into how I developed software. So it was kind of haphazard in a way. I didn't really have principles guiding how I built products. And that kind of showed where I'd run up against a brick wall in the growth of a product. Post Bamboo, in growing an investment platform and building it out, I look for compounding effects everywhere. So I invest about 30 to 40% of my salary, with kind of a dollar cost average strategy that we use with Bamboo. I cut all non-essential expenses. So I stick to that free tier in AWS. $1,000 is plenty of money on AWS to build out a whole product and run it for 2 years if you stick to certain strategies around it. I always read the fine print and understand fees, and I adhere to strict principles in my development of software. So now I have very strict principles that I've learned from my lessons around how I develop software. So I'll take you through some of that throughout this talk. So yeah, compound returns, the kind of thing we learn back at school and then forget about. So this is kind of the good stuff I was missing out on for all those years until I really thought about it. So when the interest is invested back on, which then earns interest again, so like a snowball rolling down a hill, the sooner you start rolling and the longer the hill, the bigger it is at the end. So I guess a quick intuition game to kind of get into the mindset of compounding and how it can have a good effect. So if I was to ask you how you became a millionaire or how you would become a millionaire, for most people, the thoughts are invest all in a new tech stock that will 10,000 buy in the next year. Probably GameStop, where most people are putting their money now, but that's the mindset a lot of people have. You throw it all down, throw down the savings on a new cryptocurrency, potentially. I don't know, dig for oil. And GameStop there. So these are the sort of mindsets a lot of people have around how you become a millionaire. A lot of gambles and not really thinking long term around how you can make money. And a lot of time people get burned when they do that. So the more like guaranteed way of doing it is investing $115 a week for 30 years. It'll give you $1 million for when you retire. So it might sound a bit more boring, but that's based on the last 30 years of the ASX. If you just put $115 into an index fund, you got $1 million for when you retire, which should take care of you pretty nicely. But there's two key principles, I guess, I want to point out from this that kind of translates into how you build software. Number one is, so you're investing $6,000 a year with that. The $6,000 you invest in year one is worth almost $100,000 by year 30. So think of like a row of snowballs. If you roll down a hill, the one that has the longest hill is going to be the biggest. But another really important point that like I didn't really get this until I worked in something like Bamboo and understood how much fees bite. But if you had a 2.5% fee, so if someone just said, oh, sign up for me, I'll get you better returns, and they put on a 2.5% fee, it doesn't sound like much, but you'd only have 600,000 when you retire at the end of those 30 years. So those fees also compound and they really flatten out the curve of growth. And if you can see, if that was a 5% fee, it would basically not grow at all. It'd be down to 400,000. So fees really add up over the long term. So invest early good, fees bad. Like they're the two things I'll drill into my kids, two things I'll have them kind of throughout their life. And so trying to correlate those kind of principles to software, a lot of software teams are struggling. So I see this in my work. The chasm between low and high performing software teams is widening. So we're seeing like exponential gains. Some people are getting really exponential returns on their investment in software. Some are delivering 2,600 times faster than other teams, which is a crazy number. So I wanted to kind of go through why I think this is in my experience and how you can combat it, so you don't end up being the 1 to someone's 2,604 ratio, because you're never going to succeed in startup if you're fighting against those kind of numbers. You want to be the 2,604 guy. So what I generally have seen with software teams, and this will probably correlate to non-software startups as well, but it's been more focused on software. So generally we see a kind of plateau of delivery, and it happens in startup a lot too. So what happens is we have an idea and we get really excited about that idea, and we rush out of the blocks and we just develop a load of features, we rush it out. And there's no harm in validating an idea with customers, but what we do is we don't stop then and we just keep going on with this idea. So we've been really excited, we've got features out, we're starting to get some sort of traction. But then what happens is defects start to roll in. So issues start to happen in the platform, customers start to complain about things, and usually we don't have automated testing in place. So we got so excited with delivering software that we didn't write our tests first, we didn't do all of this. So we have to manually test anytime a defect rolls in. And what happens is we fix the defect and that creates a new defect. And what the kind of mental model for that is it's a fee you've added onto your software delivery. So compared to that 2.5% fee, these defects are probably like a 10 to 20% fee on your delivery. And that manual testing on top of it is another fee. And so instead of our delivery cycle ticking up, it starts to flatten off. And then what happens next is that our application complexity tends to increase. So we didn't do automated deployment pipelines. We got so excited. Maybe we threw our app up on an EC2 instance or we did something, but we didn't plan out like how this would scale. And that increasing application complexity leads to escalating release times. So maybe now you need to start coordinating releases between teams. And that coordination in itself is like maybe another 10 to 20% fee. So those fees are really start to bite as the two come together. You're coordinating releases, you're having to manually test them. And so our curve flattens out again. And then another issue nowadays, if you're not doing like cloud native development, you've just deployed it onto a server. What happens after like 6 to 12 months, maybe it's even 2 years, but these operational issues begin to multiply. So things like you might get an email from AWS saying the service is going to be deprecated, or you've got a security patch to do. Maybe the server crashes during the night. Maybe you need to start thinking about load balancing. But all these operational issues begin to multiply and they start to feed into your day-to-day. And again, it's another fee on top. So you might be up at like a 40 to 50% fee on your delivery. For some people, it can hit like they're just paying fees at this point. And what can happen is you basically stop delivering features. So you started off really strong, you had loads of features out the door, but you tailed off and you couldn't really follow up on that. And now all you're doing is really paying back debt on your software delivery. And you're no longer moving the needle for your customers. And this is sort of the point where, I guess if a corporate came in and you're a startup, they can kind of catch up to you and overtake you pretty quickly if you take this strategy as a startup. And so I don't know how many people have seen this. I've seen this a lot in, I couldn't quite specify sometimes why sprints I get annoyed with, but sometimes you get the illusion of progress in sprints. So you're in there, you're going, I'm going to fix bug 871, and then I'm going to fix bug 872 and 873, and that's my week sprint. And you're feeling good about yourself. You've got your burn down chart, but you haven't really delivered any tangible value for your customers. You've just kind of given yourself the illusion of progress, but really all you've done is paid down debt. It's like someone with a credit card debt, like you're just paying it back to the bank at that point. And yeah, I guess if you're a corporate, so we can see this with banks, if you're a corporate, you can kind of keep going on for a long time here before it comes to a head. But if you're a startup, it comes to a head really quickly and you're really fighting for your life here. Like I said, if you've actually been somewhat successful, corporate will have become interested at this point, and just a straight line for them will take them over, or they'll overtake you. So you're really fighting for your life. And this is a kind of thing I think of. I wish the idea had never come to me. I wish none of this had happened. So it's really painful at this point in startup if you reach it, because everyone's getting really stressed. It's like, why can't I just get a feature out the door? Why can't we just do this? And if you step back and look at it, it's because you're paying a lot of debt back basically in how you created your software. Jeff Bezos, the man of the moment this morning. This quote from him kind of always rang true for me. Irrelevance followed by excruciating, painful decline followed by death of your company. So it is a really painful place to be. If you started off so bright and it tailed off like that, it's a really painful place to be. And it does usually die really slowly at that point. So yes, that was a pretty negative outlook on how some projects can go. So I'm looking at more, how can we address that and have a more positive look at how we can tackle our software projects. So Sam Altman, a quote, you should Google Sam Altman compounding after this. It's really worth reading for your morning. But he has a quote called, "Compounding is magic, look for it everywhere." And it's true, if we can take this principle, not just in investing, but everywhere else, it can have a huge effect on, on how we deliver. So coming back to this sort of conceptual model, investing $115 a week and waiting for the returns to compound. Our journey at Bamboo was sort of something along those lines. So for the first 3 to 4 months, I joined the team. We didn't actually deliver any features. We didn't get anything out to customers. So we did beta trials. We built a trial product, released it to customers, realized it wasn't good enough, didn't use that for the product moving forward. Did a lot of technical spikes, event storming, example mapping. So really trying to think through the problem as much as we could before we put it in customers' hands. And this is partly because we were building what was basically a bank from the ground up and taking people's money. So it mightn't be as extreme for other startups, but when you're building an investment platform, you have to go that bit further. And so this is kind of an example of what we went through before we even launched the product to a customer, the first MVP. So we did a lot of technical spikes, mapped out the architecture in AWS, load tested, make sure it could hold up to it, mapped out all the events in the system, example map things. So if you don't do example mapping, this is called a BDD test. So this is a test for communicating between developers and business people. So a lot of times where software teams go wrong is they don't really communicate the intent of the features. So Bamboo sounded really simple. You round up your spare change and you invest it. But we had strategies like $1, $2 strategy. And before we actually sat down to formalize this, some people thought, oh, the $2 strategy means, for example, if I buy something for $3.20, then it would round up to $5, whereas other people thought it would always round up to an even number. So it would round up to $4. So if we hadn't done this before we delivered, somewhere like 1,000 times the cost, if you deliver the feature and then find that you're not in alignment, actually go back and fix that and re-release it is 1,000 times the cost compared to sitting down for 25 minutes and just going through it together. And when you do, these are human readable tests. So the business person can read the tests and the programmer implements them. And every time you check in code from then on, all of these tests run and verify the platform is working. That's sort of the compounding returns you're getting. Every time you make a change, all of these tests run. So tests are really a huge investment that you're getting massive returns on. It's a bit of pain up front for a lot of return down the line. And that bit of pain up front puts a lot of people off doing it. And that's what they miss out on. So I think it was St. Patrick's Day, 2018, we released the MVP to customers. Not sure why we picked that day, keep me off the beer. So we released the minimum feature set to customers. And straight away, like we said previously, some bugs start to roll in. No matter how much planning you do, you're still going to have issues in the real world. There's 50 Australian banks out there I didn't realize, and just some of them we had issues with. But because we had our automated deployment pipeline in place, because we had automated tests and we had confidence before we deployed, we were still committing every day. So the day after the initial release, 5 deployments were completed to production to resolve minor issues. So we were able to see the main issues, write tests for them, commit the code, and the pipeline deployed, and we were able to resolve them for our customers. So that really took the heat off the team. When you're dealing with people's money, you want that in place where you can resolve the issues very quickly or it gets very stressful. And then the following day, we did another 5 releases. So we got rid of all the major bugs straight away within 2 days. And then 11 days after the release, we were able to implement and roll out 6 new features to our customers. So because we had the pipeline and tests in place, we were able to quickly resolve any issues. And then we were able to look at what were people saying around the features they wanted. And we were able to quickly sit down, example map them, write tests. We had that framework in place. And to get 6 new features out within 11 days, like our customers really appreciated that. Lots of these were things that we didn't even realize they wanted so much. And to get them out that quick really ties your customer to you. So yeah, I guess tangible progress for your customers. So rather than focusing too much on the sprint and focusing on those bugs and thinking you're doing progress, having a high-level roadmap really helped, and working through this, having it visible for our customers and checking them off as we went along. And then because the platform was entirely serverless, 12 months, 18 months down the line, there was no need to be spending days patching servers, doing anything like that. The only thing I had to do, I think, was upgrade the node runtime. Because everything is tested, you just commit it, make sure that the tests work, and then it's deployed out and it's fixed. So there's no fees there. So again, you're getting an uptick. You can get back to focusing on feature delivery. And then what happens in AWS land? I guess they're getting a bit of promotion today, AWS, so maybe they're getting some bang for their buck. But you kind of earn interest if you build entirely cloud native. You're building on a platform that's constantly being improved by a really good technical team. So for us, here's a few of the huge features that were delivered. So these are all massive engineering problems, all solved for free. So all these came along, we integrated them into our product, and they resolved some of the technical debt we had. And then that again allowed us to move forward without us actually having to spend 3 to 4 months doing it ourselves. And so that freed us up as a development team to focus on automation rather than having to pay back fees and start to do things ourselves. We're able to focus on automating different parts of the platform. And again, that frees us up and allows us to focus on the customers more. And then you get that sort of uptick again in feature delivery because you're not spending your time doing manual day-to-day tasks. And so I guess this is to say the proof is in the pudding. So the new owners at Bamboo were kind enough to share their product market fit survey with me from, I think, 2 months ago. So if you haven't done the product market fit, it's a really simple survey that gives you a lot of indication of how your product's doing. So you ask, how would you feel if you could no longer use your product? And if you can get above 40%, you've got strong product market fit. And Bamboo is getting about 60% now product market fit. 60% of people would be very disappointed if they could no longer use the product, which is a really strong indicator of product market fit. And only 5.3 not disappointed, it really isn't that useful. If you get over 40% saying it really isn't that useful, it's a punch in the gut, but it's a sign that you don't really have product market fit and you got to get back to the drawing board. So like I said, the fact that we had all that in place sounds really technical, but it has a real impact on the customer and how they perceive your product. And I guess looking back, I didn't know about the 4 key metrics when I was at Bamboo, ironically, but consultancy and Perth Mechanical Rock were in with us at the start. And they knew a lot about it and I learned it from them afterwards. But these are the key metrics that I think were key behind us being able to scale the platform. So researchers determined only 4 key metrics differentiated low performing and high performing software teams. They're really simple metrics to use to gauge how you're doing as a software team and how you can improve. So number 1 is deployment frequency. So the average number of deploys per day. Most people don't have a concept of deploys per day. It's like a release cycle every 2 weeks. But if you can get those deploys going out all the time, you can see what happened for us at Bamboo. You're able to take the pressure off the team. You're able to release smaller payloads, which can get the delivery cycle going. And so for us, having that automated pipeline and automated test meant we could deploy like 5 times per day if we wanted to. Lead time for changes. So the time for work to be implemented, tested, and delivered is another key indicator. So if you have any manual testing going on, your lead time for changes starts to become exponential. If it's all automated, it can be out there within 10 minutes. If there's manual testing, you've got to give it to a tester. If they find a bug, it's got to come back to you. So reducing that feedback loop between getting feedback on whether your feature works or not. And also no need to orchestrate releases is a big one for reducing the lead time for changes. The other one is change failure rate. So of the total number of changes you released, how many failed? If you bundle up a lot of changes into one release, so every 2 weeks or every month or every 6 months, the odds are you're going to have 100% change failure rate or 100% failure rate because something within that will fail. Whereas if you constantly have small payloads going out, you're not going to have much of an issue. If you do have an issue, it's a smaller thing to roll back, and then it's not going to impact your customers as much. And the other one is time to restore. So just like putting software out, taking it back, if you don't have an automated pipeline in place, can be hard. Do you roll forward? Do you roll back? How do you fix it? So the time to restore a service when an issue happens. We were using event sourcing at Bamboo. So everything that happened within the system was an event that led to the state it was in. So anytime anything happened, we had a clear audit trail of events, so we could easily recreate it and fix it. And usually we fixed forward rather than rolling back, which can be really time consuming. So yes, I just wanted to, like, you talk about things like the 4 key metrics and it goes over your head. So just an example of how the 4 key metrics can kind of guide your delivery, because it helped me after I did this talk. I really looked at how I was delivering software in my startup. Because you do this in work, but it's easy to forget about it in your startup because you just get so excited to get features out. So first sense of in December, we were going to release in December, but everything was fine on the back end side, but the front end was becoming a real burden. So we were building a React Native app, but deploys were a huge bottleneck. It was taking weeks for me just to get one out the door. And because I was working a few hours every evening on it, I'd fix something, but I wouldn't get a release out, and then I'd get to it the next day, and things would queue up for weeks. Then I'd release it, same thing, there'd be bugs. I'd start to get frustrated, and I really started to kind of lose confidence in the platform, and I was starting to get frustrated. I wasn't really enjoying developing anymore. So we didn't release in December, and what I looked at was like the 4 key metrics around how I could improve this. So I decided I needed to move from the bare React Native to Expo. So that allows me to release software to the app over the air. So rather than having to go through the whole manual iOS deploy process, I can do it automated. So I can just, anytime I make a change, release it, it's done. So now an app release is just another commit. So the apps are just like releasing another backend change. All the deploys are automated. Changes are released and published as they're fixed. So if I have 2 hours in the evening, a customer has a bug, we fix that bug, check in it to source code, and it's released over the air to the app on the customer's phone. So getting reduced bugs because I'm fixing just a small payload every time. I release that, there's reduced bugs because it's only impacting a small part of the system. If it does have a problem, I have a rollback process for that. And then now it's starting to become enjoyable again, working on it. Confidence is coming back, enthusiasm is returning for it, and our feature delivery is ramping back up again, and we're ready to launch. So going into a launch with that feeling of confidence and enthusiasm is a lot different to going into it where you're just feeling beat up already. So that's kind of how the 4 key metrics guided me in my startup again. So yeah, sorry, that's been a long talk. So there's a lot to cover there. So I just wanted to cover some takeaways on it. So if you're a product owner on a startup or a corporate, I think a big one is don't get lost in Jira. Keep a high level roadmap prominent. People fall into that trap of the illusion of progress really easily, but you really need to focus on the high level roadmap. And in startup, I think it's really important to be able to let the small opportunities go. Like you get a lot of offers if you're any kind of halfway successful as a startup for like, can you do this for $10,000? Can you do X, Y, Z? But usually all of those come with accumulating fees on your platform. You might make some change, which kind of makes your application more complex or makes it harder to deliver. And that can really slow you down. So you're not going to make it. It probably won't give you enough bang for buck unless it's a big opportunity to accumulate a fee for it over the long run. And then as a developer, learn to love testing. It's kind of hard for people at times if you're not a testing mindset, but think about those compounding returns every time you do testing. Every automated test you put in place compounds down the line. And then if you're building in the cloud, just keep fees in mind when you stray from managed services. Try and stick to all those managed services as much as possible, and then weave the 4 key metrics into your fabric. Use that kind of lens to look at how you're delivering software. And then if you do have a startup, I would recommend invert your expectations of scale. When I started out, I always thought I had this idea of you launch a product and 100,000 people use it, but it's not. It's a long road. You usually have to go through a long 3 to 4 year growth cycle before you start to hit that bendy upwards curve. So kind of invert your expectations of scale and be patient and put these things in place so that when it does happen, you have everything to take advantage of it. And yeah, because it's going to be that long, it's not going to be a quick bang for buck. Have big dreams. You're going to be putting 3 to 5 years of your life into it. So make sure it's something worthwhile that you're pursuing at yes. And finally, if you want, go to sensitive.xyz and sign up and join our beta. That's my pitch for the day. You can help us in our goal of helping people check in on their mental health. And then go to willhq.com. There's Brendan. There's your pitch, Brendan. So that's it from me for today. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. There's a round of applause there for you, Brian. Thank you. Super informative. Quick question I've got for you. For those of you who are watching, they're probably sat there going, what does serverless mean?
True, actually, yeah, probably make an assumption of that. So serverless is kind of a different paradigm around delivering software. So you basically just deploy a function to the cloud and it just runs. It's an event-driven programming model. So anytime, for example, a customer, what would be an example you could automate? But anytime a customer just submits a request, rather than a whole server running and you have to manage a server and memory and all of that, AWS boots up a function, runs your logic, replies to it, and then shuts it down again. So you don't have to manage servers, you don't have any fees in your delivery, and they take care of scaling it up out and for you. So for example, if you had a single Python server running in the cloud, but you didn't do serverless, if all of a sudden someone tweets out your company and 100,000 people go there, that one Python server is going to get crushed and it's going to fail. And that's where you see people where they have service not available. If you go serverless, AWS will scale out the function to, I think it's up to 40,000 requests per second. So without doing anything, AWS manages to scale out yours and shut it down. And then after that, 2 hours later, if no one is coming to your site, you're not paying any money. So you can use that $1,000 free dollars you get from AWS, you can service probably, I don't know, a few million customers with it.
Brilliant, brilliant. Okay, cool. So normally at this point, we'd ask people for questions. So I'm going to ask if anybody's got any questions for Brian. By the way, great talk. Loved it. Really, really great. And I'm so glad that we recorded it, because I'm literally going to take that and send it to all our devs. Watch, I will be testing you on it.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
So are there any questions in it? But whack it in the chat. If there's any questions that you might have, we'll give you a little longer.
I've got one here from Brian, Richard Bone for Brian. Have you used offshore developers and or development team members? How does this relate to what you've spoken about today?
I've used them once in the past and it didn't work out for me. It was kind of just, there was a lot of overhead in kind of communicating with them. It was a Philippines team, and there was an English language thing, but also training them up was a hard one. So I guess because I'm a developer, it's not a path I generally take, but I can see, I have heard some good success stories from people doing it. What I would say is, if you're going to use an offshore team, is really focus on the BDD. So look up BDD, make sure you're communicating with them, and that what tends to happen is you get a lot of nodding of heads with developers, but it's not really getting across from offshore. So if you can formalize that in a spec where there's no confusion, and if they're implementing that spec, so going back to that slide where we had human readable tests, that will kind of help you navigate that, because it's just so tempting to everyone nod their heads and then it releases and it's like, that's not what I said.
I can speak firsthand to that experience. You kind of, you ask them and then yes, there's lots of yeses, and you're like, great, they're gonna deliver exactly what I want. And yeah, so I think I will second what Brian said in saying that you literally have to spell it out letter by letter as to what it is that you want and be very specific. I actually find mock-ups, interactive mock-ups, are super well, and in using them, like the program we use is Adobe XD, super easy to use. You can build it and you can interact with it and show how you want it to act, and then also you can put the logic behind it, and that's made it a lot easier for us to communicate with our offshore team. There's a question here: do you recommend any other resources, readings, or planning managing software development?
I think looking at the state of DevOps report and those 4 key metrics are very good to look at. And kind of getting your head around how those play out and how they can help your platform improve. Looking into BDD testing is that helped me out a lot in creating, as a developer, to have a framework for communicating with the business person, and getting that formalized is really powerful. And then I think just diving into serverless and cloud native, it's kind of such a broad, expansive space. Just try and dive in as much as you can. And just build something with it.
Brilliant. I'm just going to scroll up.
Paul's asked if there's any suggestions for BDD tools that you're using there.
I use
first uneducated. What is BD?
Yes, apologies. BDD is behavioral driven development. So we have TDD, which is test driven development. So before a developer writes any code, they write their tests. So really trying to put the brakes on just developing and thinking through what you're doing, but also making sure that those automated tests are in place so that you don't release code. But before that, in BDD, what you have is basically you pull in a story from your sprint and you sit down with the business owner or the product owner, and you make sure that you both understand the feature. So you come up with examples, you write down examples in plain English. So it's a framework for communication between the developer and the product owner. So you both have to write down examples to illustrate that you both understand it, and they become tests that feed into it before the TDD lifecycle. So it sort of wraps around the TDD lifecycle.
And just to explain a story, is that the whole as a blah, I want to blah, so that I can blah? Yeah,
like basically whatever works for you. That's generally the case. BDD sits in your sprint lifecycle. So you come up with your user stories, you pull them into a sprint. Before you start, BDD is like a safeguard to make sure that you're not starting something that you don't fully understand. It's very easy to start in something. And just one example we had was in Bamboo, we released a performance feature, and we didn't go through, we all thought we knew how portfolio performance worked. but we didn't go through those edge cases. And what happened was we released it to customers. We realized none of us really had communicated. We just gone ahead with it. And that really, like, we lost nearly a month to that, which I really regret. So not sitting down and just forcing yourselves to go through all the edge cases before you start development is really important.
Yeah. There's a little bit of debate, I guess, in the chat as well on lean startup. So this doesn't sort of replace lean startup or anything like that. You've still got to do all your validation. I'm just wondering, like, from Bamboo's perspective or from Sensive's, what sort of steps did you go through before you even started writing code, I guess? And
yeah, we did a lot of Figma prototypes and shared those with customers. So trying to work at that level of, because software is just so expensive. Like, it's such an expensive pursuit. So the more you can do in prototyping tools now, I think really helps. So you can easily create, like Linus, who I created Sensive with, he's a really strong designer and he can do mock-ups really quickly. So getting him to do mock-ups and share those with customers, you can create prototypes from those. So that's sort of where we focused on at the start. And we did a beta trial. So I think like where I look at with lean startup is doing a beta trial with no committal to it becoming a product is really powerful. Because if you quickly release a product and it somewhat takes off, if you've done it in a haphazard way in software, it tends to bite and you don't get the long-term returns that you're looking for. So prototypes as much as possible. Beta trials can be really powerful. That way, if you haven't got it right, you can pull back and kind of, I guess, reorganize yourself. We did that at Bamboo. We did a beta trial and we realized like we weren't in a place where we could scale it up. So we had to go back to the drawing board before we actually released the product.
Cool. When will we see Sensive on Android?
Yeah, I'm hoping since I switched to Expo, I get Android for free. So that's another big return. There was some things in React Native. So I'm hoping probably in the next couple of weeks. It's all automated. Expo is great. So if you do any app development, look at Expo. It's been a bit of a learning curve, but well worth it.
Oh, awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
There you go, Richard. There's a question here that I don't quite get. So Carl, you've asked, can some of the fees involved be eliminated with hardware options? I found some cheap secondhand hardware. And I don't know if that relates.
Give us some context, Carl. Give us some context. Okay, cool.
All right.
So,
any other questions, guys? Chuck them in the chat.
If not, what we'll do, Brian, if someone's got a question for you, how do they contact you?
Yeah, you can hit me up on LinkedIn. Looked up Brian Foody on LinkedIn. And yeah, happy to talk about anything. I'm usually knocking about various places as well. So hopefully after lockdown, I can see you as well. And I keep meaning to get more into morning startup. So I'll do my best, even though there's a baby on the way.
Yeah, congratulations.
Congrats.
Yeah, got this.
Yeah, you won't be a morning starter for a while, mate.
Well, maybe he will be because it's early morning, so he'll be taking the morning.
Yeah, I like the baby.
Baby in tow.
Yeah, but hit me up on LinkedIn is the best way. And yeah, like I said, if you're doing anything with IoT, machine learning, mental health, be cool to chat. It's very hard to find people who are doing IoT stuff in particular. So at Austell, there's some cool stuff going on there. So it'd be good to chat around that.
Perfect.
Terrific.
All good. Okay, well, I think what we'll do is, so who's I literally just looked and I have a brain like a goldfish. The next person we've got on is Jürgen, who hopefully will be in person, who's talking about Facebook ads, hacks, tips, and tricks. So yeah, Jürgen will be joining us in person. I'm going to send it out there. We will be in person for the next one in 2 weeks. There is not going to be a 3-week lockdown. We are going to basically come out of it on Friday at 6 p.m. So yeah. If you have any, like I say, if you have any questions for us or you want to present, come and hit Scott and myself up. And again, we'll let you know if this is going to be online. Hopefully it's not. Hopefully we'll be back at Beautiful Riff in 2 weeks' time. Make sure you've got your subscribed to receive the emails from us. So we will send out some announcements. We will also send out how wonderful AWS is and how you can get a hold of that $1,000 credit. And yeah, for now, thank you very much. In fact, while we're doing this, what I normally do when we do this piece is I will promote you all, if you so wish, to come on and share your webcam so we can see all of your beautiful faces. Okay, so let's just see who we got. Some people are too shy because they're probably
Everyone's sitting there in their undies.
pajamas.
Ah!
No,
no,
dare
don't make me
you.
presenter.
I'm not going to be presenter. How dare you? I was watching you on the toilet.
There's Deepak, my man. How you doing? Any questions? If you got any questions, come online, have a chat. This is usually at Riff, we sort of all have a bit of a networking session and stuff. So yeah,
We like
everyone's
to
like just
we want
leaving.
to 1 second, here we go. Keep going. Oh my God, there's going to be several pages of this.
Let's see everyone.
Do you know, so there's a flaw there. Talking about product design, right? If I want to add someone, the way that Zoom's thing like notification comes up, it then covers the fact that I cannot add new people. So here we go.
The windowing system in Zoom, yes, it needs work. Gets me every time.
Exactly.
Oh, cool.
Never mind. Well, thank you, everybody.
Does anyone have anyone that's come online? Michael, Richard, do you have any questions you'd like to ask in person now that you're here? Just unmute yourself if you can. I don't know if Dave's allowed that. But.
Yeah. So with that subscribe, is that just through Meetup or is there a separate list for that?
That's through Meetup. Just make sure that you've got the settings of Meetup set so that you can receive our email. So it's in the settings in Meetup basically. So you have to be subscribed to receive like organizer emails. Unfortunately, there is no way Meetup don't allow you to export any of your mate on the list. So we're constrained, unfortunately, unless we go and build the list elsewhere. So, okay. Well, thank you very much, everybody. I'm going to hit this stop recording button now, and we will see you all in person in 2 weeks. Thank you very much. Take care.
All right.
Bye.
See you then, guys.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
Everyone.
No worries.